Welcome, Bethlehem. Welcome, Bethlehem. No matter how you pronounce the name of this beautiful place we live, Vote Common Good welcomes you. The fact that you are here shows that you are taking advantage of the American dream. I want to introduce the members of our local planning team. We're from Bethlehem and Whitehall. But before I get to that, I want to say that it's okay to change your mind. This is a safe place to do that. And we're asking, as a matter of fact, you and us to join us in thinking differently. This is not about voting for Republicans or voting for Democrats. This is about voting for common good. And it's needed now more than ever. And it's addressing a need here that you're here tonight to see how we can begin that process. Welcome in that. I'd like to introduce my wife, Jane Cook. Hey, Jane. I'd like to introduce Carol Wickard. I'd like to introduce Richard Schaefer. My name is Greg Cook. We have two others who are ill, Cynthia Simmons and Steve Simmons. And we were the six that pulled together arrangements for tonight, and we're here to say hello. Thank you for coming. Hello.
shines brightest in a darkened room. So things are pretty dark out there right now. And we all need to be a light. So when you get up in the morning, don't forget to turn your light on. When you leave your house, don't forget to turn your light on. Amen? Amen. Amen? Amen. Amen. If you want to, get on up with us. Get on up and clap. Come on. Yeah, this little light of mine. Well, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah. Well, this little light of mine. Well, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. Yeah, now, now. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let me hear you sing. Come on, everybody. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Well, this little light of mine. Well, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, this little light of mine. Well, now I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine. Well, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Yeah, let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. One more time. Let it shine. Let your little light, let your little light, let your light, let it shine. Give it up for Papa, coming good. Bethlehem, mighty, mighty choir.
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Welcome.
They'll be back. They'll be back. Don't worry about it.
Thank you, Vince. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Welcome to the first event of the Vote Common Good Tour. We've spent the last few days walking your streets and your neighborhoods and learning a little bit about your beautiful community, its history, its culture, its diversity, and we're so excited to be kicking this off here with you today. It somehow seems appropriate that a new movement is being birthed in the town of Bethlehem. We're a group of pastors and authors and concerned citizens who come together from the corners of this country. My name is Christy Berghoff. I'm an author, I'm a civil discourse consultant, and I'm a mother of 4 young children. And for most of my years, I've been a Republican. So many people close to me have been asking, Christy, why would you do this? What are you doing? Why would you leave your 4 young children for 5 weeks, moved into a cramped space with a bunch of people, some of whom have very smelly feet, and travel over 10,000 miles in this bus around the country? Why would you do this? The thing is, we need to look honestly and see the truth of what we as a country have become, because something is terribly amiss. I suspect many of you are here today because you sense something is terribly amiss. Too many people are left behind in this country. Too many systems are broken. Too many policies are harming people. But we can't fix these broken systems if we don't first name the brokenness. In the United States of America, our country, we turn our backs on immigrants families who are desperately fleeing violence and struggle in their home countries. We rip terrified children out of their mother's arms, lock them in cages, and put worlds between them. In our country, poverty and inequality are on the rise. In the United States of America, our country, our educational system is ranked near the bottom of developed nations. In the United States of America, our country, people have to decide if they'll choose bankruptcy in order to treat their illnesses. In the United States of America, our country, money, speech, and democracy is crumbling as our representatives increasingly represent their billionaire corporate donors instead of the lifeblood of this nation, the hardworking Americans who build and sustain this country. In the United States of America, our country, our systems, our legislation, and our tax laws favor those who are already thriving and kick to the ground those who are already down. In the United States of America, our country, some of the hardest working people doing some of the most thankless jobs across the land, often in jobs of service to the rest of us, live below the poverty line. In the United States of America, our country, we throw people in prison for profit. In the United States of America, our country, racism continues to be discreetly and blatantly woven into our systems. In the United States of America, our country, the love of money and political power has rotted out the foundational base of democracy, and we're getting ourselves into deep trouble. And I've been asking myself this question: how can this be? How can this be in the United States of America that these things are happening, that this is the reality? This country has a great history of movements of people rising up to stare into the eyes of injustice, demanding better. The abolitionist movement stared down slavery. The women's suffrage movement stared down gender inequalities. The civil rights movement stared down racial inequalities. And the list, it just keeps going on. And so I've been asking myself, how can it be that in the United States of America, a single president has managed to unravel many of these protections and civil rights that were achieved through centuries of collective movements of people who made great sacrifices as they stood up for more just and dignified systems? How can this be? And how can it be that we have a Congress whose moral spine has deteriorated to the point where they choose to let all this unraveling continue? Are they so distant from the people and so sidled up to power that their eyes and hearts have become corrupted in a way that their policies are so devoid of basic compassion? These times we're in that can seem so overwhelming. These times we're in are filled with chaos. But as a person of faith, I believe that one of the primary expressions that my faith in this world, the way my faith lives and breathes and moves in the world, is through the act of bringing and embodying shalom in the places where this chaos reigns. Not only in our homes, in our neighborhoods, in our relationships, in our cities, but across the country and around the world. I believe we have a responsibility to restore balance to systems that oppress, to bring freedom to the captive, to feed the hungry, to care for the sick, and on and on. We should be continually pressing forward in agreement with the teachings of Jesus. That's how I, as a Christian, feel. There doesn't seem to be any quick or easy fix to this mess we're in, I'm sorry to say. Some days I feel downright overwhelmed. Some days I want to quit. I feel exhausted, at times paralyzed even. I don't always know what to do. But that joining the Vote Common Good movement seemed like a good place to start. The process of restoration begins with naming these evils and injustices, as uncomfortable as it may be for us to do this. Because speaking for myself, I know that sometimes my own complacency has played a part in letting things unravel. Because sometimes, if I'm honest, things aren't so bad for me personally. And so it's easy to forget about those who are barely hanging on. The Vote Common Good movement reminds me that we're each a part of the whole, and so we each have a part in shaping the character and the values of the whole. So, friends in Bethlehem, why have I left my children for 5 weeks, gotten on this jam-packed bus full of some people who have really smelly feet? I've left my children because I love my children. I've left them because desperate times really do call for desperate measures. Because crazy times call for crazy responses. Because as a follower of Jesus, I feel compelled to leave this world a little better and a little brighter than the state I currently find it in. And now I want to invite John Pavlovitz to give us a word.
Well, good evening, friends. It is so good to see you, Pennsylvania. You look beautiful tonight, and greetings to all who are watching this online. I have been flying a lot lately, traveling the country, talking about equality and diversity and compassion and justice, and that's good news for some people, but not for me, because I'm not that great a flyer. When I'm on a plane, I tend to realize that I'm on a huge metal tube hurling through space, and I get uneasy. And recently I was flying to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was having a relatively good flight for someone who's sure they're going to die in an airplane. And I had my earbuds in and a little Barbie doll-sized bag of pretzels, specimen cup of soda, and I'm wedged into that elementary school-sized chair, and I'm enjoying myself, and the captain comes on, and I know it's the captain because he tells me it's the captain, and he says, I want the flight attendants to return to their seats. I want you to fasten your seatbelts because we're about to hit a little chop. That's the word he uses. And I know that word, right? And he goes on, he talks about weather systems that we're approaching. He says, it's going to get a little choppy, and I know what that means. Choppy is pilot speak for we are about to be shaken like a snow globe in the hands of an angry toddler, right? Choppy means I'm about to contemplate my mortality once more while wedged between two total strangers. Choppy means I'm about to make a lot of promises to God about what I will do if we land safely, promises I do not intend to keep, right? But the pilot was telling us very matter-of-factly, hold on, turbulence is coming. And if you're a believer raised in the Christian tradition, you'll recognize that idea because Jesus is talking to the disciples, to his students, and he's encouraging them about the time that's going to come when he leaves. And he says, I want you to know these things because in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. So Jesus is telling those who would follow him in the ways of compassion and mercy and love and justice, hang on, turbulence is coming. And so I've come here from Raleigh, North Carolina to give you a message. Are you ready? Hang on, turbulence is coming. Actually, I'm a little late, aren't I? I think turbulence got the earlier flight. It's been here for a while, right? I know that you understand the shaking that is happening in our country. I know you feel it. I know the unrest it's caused in you. It's exhausting to give a damn, isn't it? To be a person of compassion in a time when compassion is in such great demand, right? To wake up every day and push back against predatory politicians and toxic systems and acts of treason and leadership failures in the church and presidential tweet tantrums, right? The volume and the relentlessness of those things can be wearying, have you noticed? And it's in sort of this time of relentless urgency, this time of national fracture, this time of incredible grieving that we gather in this place. And see, I know what you're carrying. You're carrying these big picture, systemic realities. But you're not just carrying those, you're carrying the individual stories that those realities point to, right? You're carrying around the stories of individual people with names and faces and lives that you're a part of, people that you love. You're carrying around these large realities and these individual stories, and they pile on your shoulders, and they're in your clenched jaw, and they're in your elevated heart rate, and they're in the knot in your stomach that you have when you wake up and you look at the news, or you check Twitter, or you walk into your community, or you walk into the living room, and you see how much compassion is required and what people of faith are called to in this moment. And I don't know why you're here, but I think you're here because you're a damn giver. I think you're here because you have a deep love for humanity, and because you do, I think you're exhausted. Let me hear you if you're exhausted tonight. Or maybe you're too tired to tell me. I know the question that you ask as a person of faith. Is it me, or has a large portion of my people lost their minds? Has a large portion of this country lost its moral compass? The good and the bad news is, it isn't you. It's good news because of what it says about you, but it's bad news because of the place and time in which you now find yourself. See, that you see how upside down this all is means that your faculties are intact. It means your mind is fully right. It means your heart is working properly. It means that you still have a soul doing what souls are supposed to do, keep you humane in profoundly inhumane times. And the question for us today is, what are we going to do in this time of turbulence? People say, John, you seem angry lately. I say, I don't seem angry. I'm angry. We have a petulant, insecure man-child live tweeting his every nonsensical thought right now. We have professed pro-life Christians ignoring almost all of life. We have Nazis running for office, and migrant kids in cages, and ICE raids in hospital rooms, and supremacists in the cabinet. If you're not angry right now, your empathy is broken and your faith is ornamental. So it's okay to be angry, but I want you to decide tonight what you're going to do to transform that anger into something other than anger, into something beautiful, into something redemptive. People ask me, John, how do you keep going other than wine and chocolate right now? I keep going because I look around, I see the damn givers. I see that the people of God are still there. I still see that faithful, decent, loving, compassionate people still inhabit this place, and I see you tonight. So thank you for reminding me. I want you to think about what you've seen in this time of turbulence. I've seen millions of people become ordinary overnight activists. I've seen them engage the political process. I've seen them run for office, right? I've seen thousands of people converge on airports to stand with refugee families. I've seen millions of people march in solidarity with marginalized communities, march in outrage. I've seen Muslim bans fail, healthcare repeals be defeated. I've watched loud defenders of faith chase away people who would claim that faith falsely. I've seen ordinary people like you leverage your social media profiles to be agents of mercy and compassion and love and justice. I've met thousands of people in progressive churches and women's groups and civic gatherings and humanist conferences and interfaith services, all declaring the same thing: we will not be people of hatred in this world. And I think that's why we're here tonight. A few months ago, I stood in a parking lot of a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. We were there to mark the Parkland shootings. We were there to grieve those who had died too soon. We were there to lament a violence that seems to be ever increasing. And so it was heavy, but there was a defiant hope in that gathering. And I saw these teenagers, young people, middle schoolers, high schoolers. They actually led the messages that day. And they spoke powerfully. They spoke prophetically. And as they spoke, the hairs in the back of my neck stood up. And I began to cry because I realized something, that there is an option that we have in the storm. We can do something in the turbulence. And one of the young men stood up and he looked out at the crowd and he said, I'm really happy to be here. I'm not happy because of why we gather, but I'm happy because I woke up looking for hope. And he scanned the crowd and he said, and here you are. In 1871, Unitarian minister Theodore Parker first spoke these words in opposition to slavery in America. He said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. You may have heard those words echoed by Martin Luther King in 1958. He repeated them to a nation that was still fighting for equality for all its people. These words have been spoken as solace in times of adversity. They've been a coping mechanism against despair. Now, I'm an impatient person, and so I believe that the arc of the moral universe may bend, but I'm wanting to give it a good nudge right now. See, we who occupy this space and time, we understand that the arc of the universe does not bend without us, does it? It never has, it never will. Humanity is the irresistible force shaping the crescent we stand on together. Every single life and every infinitesimal choice that we make with our lives right now, every decision we make to affirm our faith or deny it, every act of love or compassion that we give or withhold, they begin to shape this reality. Friends, what this means is you and I, we are the arc-benders. We're not passive victims of the difficult times in which we live. We're powerful participants in them. We are co-authors of the mighty story we find ourselves in, and together we can twist the plot of the story that's being written right now. See, we're here tonight because of the arc-benders that came before us. People who fought for equality and for diversity. And they didn't care about the inconvenience it caused them or the pain it caused them or the sacrifice. And so today, I'm asking you to do the same. Decide what matters to you. What is the truest true? What is the deepest contents of your heart? And then what are you going to do about it? How are you going to leverage your gifts and your time and your resources and your vote to make sure that the people who come after us have an America worth inheriting? This is why we keep going now. It's why we brave difficult conversations. It's why we brave those awkward moments. It's why we were willing to lose friends and lose income, because we know that this moment is the only moment that we have. See, I want to be an art bender. I want to live a life that's lean towards justice. I want to do it in the small and the close, in our families, in my friendships, in the people who know me. That's where you're going to work this out. That's where you're going to fight for the common good. But I want to do it in the big things too. I want to be out in the world. I want to be visible and loud. This is what you have to do. This is how you fight for the common good. In the small world that you save, and in the larger world, the future that you fight for. We need to be a people who have a faith that will not falter and a love that perseveres. A good friend of mine, his name is Rod, and he had invited me to his home to spend some time with him, and I had talked in the book that I'd written called The Bigger Table about his hospitality, and his home that was wonderful, and this view that was stunning. But what I said was, what was really the star of that time was the hospitality of my friend. Well, Rod lost his home in the wildfires in Northern California, and I talked to him the day that happened, and he said, John, it was crazy. He said, I got awakened at 2:15 in the morning. We had 15 minutes. We saved what we could, and we left, and everything was gone. He said this phrase. Did you hear it? We saved what we could. This is the phrase I want you to carry from this place. You can't change who the president is, but you can change some races in the political life of our country. You can't reach everyone in this country, but you can reach some people. You can't change every church's culture, but you can alter some. You can't let every person of color know that they're valued and loved and equal, but you can speak to some. And what I want you to do is I want you to leverage whatever it is you have, whatever burden that wakes you up in the morning. I want you to let that propel you into these days, and I want you to sacrifice all that you can I want you to save what you can. See, I came from Raleigh, North Carolina today looking for hope. Here you are. So blessed are the dam givers, for they will right side the world. Go and fight for the common good, friends. It's worth it.
He said, I'm so sorry, I forgot to introduce you. I said, that's okay. I'll introduce myself. How y'all feeling? Yeah. Y'all are awake. I love it. My name is Genesis B. I'm an artist and an activist from Biloxi, Mississippi. Hip hop is one of my mediums. Poetry is one of my mediums. Painting is one of my mediums. Healing, the healing arts is one of my mediums. So a little bit about my background of intersectionality. So I was raised in Mississippi, military brat, been all over, but mostly in Mississippi. My mother is a white woman from Wisconsin, raised Catholic. My father is a black man from Mississippi, raised Baptist. My mother a healer, my father a writer and activist. They both converted to Islam before my brothers and I were born. So I was raised Muslim in the Bible Belt. Biracial Muslim, queer woman of color in the Bible Belt. But what was interesting about my upbringing was that every Friday we would have family prayer. And during that time, not only were we made to read the Quran, we were made to read the gospel, we were made to read the Torah. I didn't know it at the time, but what my father was doing was instilling this concept of familiarity, that we're not all as different as people make it out to be. You know, it was the monotheistic religions, but I really took that with me wherever I went in terms of interaction with people from any background. Rich, poor, gay, straight, trans, Republican, Democrat. These are just titles. They're just titles that we ascribe to each other and that we ascribe to ourselves. So my message for you today is simple. People, not things. People are not things. We are humans. We all are different, and differences should be celebrated. Diversity is beautiful, but when it comes to a point where our differences are used to exploit one another, used to gain power and gain profit, that's where differences become a problem. So yes, celebrate differences, but ultimately we're all just human. And human dignity is a common good, a common ground. I think that we can all agree, like everyone has the basic right to human dignity. So I'm gonna do a quick poem, thank you. People, not things. That's what I'm screaming until I die. So I'm gonna do a quick poem. I never know what I'm gonna perform until right before I hit the stage. So I flew into Philadelphia last night. I was driving here for about an hour. I said, what am I gonna do for the people? What would they like? You know, am I gonna hit them with like some hardcore radical hip hop, boom bap? I'm like, no. Do I have a song that's about unification or togetherness? And I was like trying to rack my brain, and then it hit me. So, have you ever heard of a play called A World of Wonder? It's okay. I don't think you have, because it actually hasn't been released to nationwide yet. Well, it's a play that I co-wrote. It's a hip-hop style play that challenges our ideas of children with autism and children on the spectrum and people who are not neurotypical. It explores their challenges and tries to allow space for people. So different is not less. So one of the pieces that I wrote is called A World of Wonder. But my kids aren't here to help me perform it. There's a 20-kid cast and they're not here, so I'm gonna need your help. Can you help me out? Yes, I knew you could. It's very simple, so I want you to repeat after me. When I point to you, that means it's your turn to say it, all right? So it goes, every color makes a world of wonder. Every color makes a world of wonder. Yeah, yeah, and every piece is needed for the puzzle. Yeah, yeah. And every piece is needed for the puzzle. Yeah, okay. Every color makes a world of wonder. Say it. Every color makes a world of wonder. Beautiful. And every piece is needed for the puzzle. Say it. Every piece is needed for the puzzle. Oh, you all sound good. So, we're placed upon a painter's palette, all divided. Different colors separated, now our world is brightened. Despite the light that was shining, the world around us is frightening. This darkness is blinding, all this hatred and violence. See, there's a greater designing. We're all part of this picture. Let's everybody become part of this vision. There's a spectrum we all live upon. Yeah, now that's a concept I could build upon. If we can find a way to take the space, find a way to celebrate, then every soul can find its way. So lift her up and be her voice. Different races, different places, different genders, different faces. Complicated is what we made it. Love is basic, celebrate it. Rainbows faded from the rain and we're just aiming to maintain it. And every color makes a world of wonder. Yeah, yeah.
Every color makes a world of wonder.
Yeah, yeah. And every piece is needed for the puzzle. Say it. Yeah, yeah, so every color makes a world of wonder.
Every color makes a world of wonder.
Yeah, yeah, and every piece is needed for the puzzle. Yeah, yeah.
Every piece is needed for the puzzle.
Yeah, every piece is needed for the puzzle. I'll be back later on in the night, but I just want to leave y'all with this. People are not things. With all of my intersectionality and, being raised in multicultural, multi-religious household, even I have biases. And I had to come to grips with that and do some real heart work to try to understand how to overcome my own biases so that I could reach out to my critics and reach out to those who I opposed. They were once my enemies. Some have become my potential collaborators. So I want you to try to do the same. And later on, I'll be offering you some tools and exercises on how you can confront your unconscious bias and start reaching out to people in the form of collaboration and creativity. People, not things, y'all. Thank you.
Thank God I'm breathing. And I pray, don't take me soon. 'Cause I'm here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown. But I never let it get me down. When negativity surrounds. When I know someday it will all turn around. All my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars. And the people will say, one day, one day. Sing that with me. One day, one day, one day. It's not about win or lose. We all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent, blood-drenched pavement. We keep on moving, though the water stay raging. In this maze, you can lose your way, your way. But my There'll be no more war, and the children will play. Say one day, one day, one day. Sing that prayer with me. One day, 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 one day.
And that is the Reverend Vince Anderson. Vince is often finding himself in Brooklyn at the Union Pool Bar playing on Monday nights. This crowd that's gotten themselves together in this little project to travel around the country comes from all across the country. There's people from the Northwest, there's people from the Southeast, there's people like me. My name's Doug Padgett, I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's people from Raleigh, North Carolina, as you heard, from Atlanta, Georgia. There's people from Brooklyn, New York. We come together because we know there's something that we need to be up to. There's something that we all want to be up to. And just to be blunt about it all, I'm a pastor. I pastor a church in Minneapolis, and sometimes people who are progressive in their faith, that want to lean into the everyone and all of us story, tend to get real quiet and keep it in our own rooms and keep it stuck in our own hearts. And sometimes we need somebody to encourage us, and we've all been encouraged by one another and encouraged by all of you tonight to say, put that light on a stand. Don't hide your light under a bushel, and let your light shine. So we are so glad you're here. Now, I want to acknowledge that some of us are getting a little nervous when the light starts to shine in the sky tonight, right? When that lightning starts to flash, you start thinking, what am I doing sitting out here? If it gets really bad, we'll run under the shelter over here. But I think we're going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay throughout the night. Now, people are asking a lot of us on this Vote Common Good tour, and Christy told you this is our first stop. We said if we're going to start this thing anywhere, we're going to find the good people of Bethlehem and Allentown in Pennsylvania, and we're going to start with them, and then we are touring the country. We hit the road tomorrow, and we make our way to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then down into North Carolina, and then up into the Midwest, through Texas, and all the way out to California, because we think there's something going on in this country. We know that life is local. We all live in a place. We all have a bed that we call home, but we also know that we're a part of a big project with each other. So that's why we're touring the country, because we live in a country where we set policies, and those policies have effects on people's lives. And the policies that we set are set by our representatives. We didn't make up the rules. None of us here did. There were some people that organized this country, and they organized it into a representative form of democracy. In fact, you know better than I do that some of those founders got together at a hotel just a mile or so from here at the Sun Inn when they were signing the Declaration of Independence and trying to form some kind of a union. And they said, let's have people represent the people. Not a king, not a religion. Let's have the people be the representatives. So in this country, we set policies by the people that we represent. We cannot hashtag, pray, or desire our way into different policies. We have to have people who set those policies. So right now, it can feel like to a lot of us that all of a sudden we're being really partisan, because we're saying that the Republican Congress and a Republican administration is setting policies that are really putting people's welfare in jeopardy. And I am terribly afraid for the well-being of an awful lot of people. And I don't find myself often just wanting to be a partisan person. But in my belief, right now, we have to dislodge control of Congress from the people who are representing the House of Representatives and put some kind of restraint on this administration and on this agenda. I think that really matters. So that's part of the reason that we're here, because we want to support Susan Wild in her election. And that's why I want to introduce to you Congresswoman Lee from Oakland, California. She's traveling the country as well. She's been good enough to give of her time and of her life and to say that she wants to represent the people of Oakland, California. But Congresswoman Lee, thank you for being with us tonight. It's a great honor to have you. And I'll tell you, we have reached out to other politicians. Any politician, anybody seeking elected office or in elected office that wants to put a restraint on the policies that are causing harm in this country, we'll have them at any of our events. So if you know them, invite them along. But Congresswoman Lee, we are so glad that you're here. Thanks for being with us.
Well, first of all, giving honor to God and thanking you for the invitation to be with you this evening. And I want to first bring you greetings from my home church in Oakland, California, the Allen Temple Baptist Church. And I just want to say to you how happy I am to be here with Susan Wild, who will be your next member of Congress. With your help, because Susan understands the desperate need now to restore decency, dignity, and respect to our government. And so I just want to thank you all for supporting her and for thanking you for inviting me to be here for a few minutes. You know, I was reminded of 2 Corinthians in the scriptures that tells us that the light shall outshine the darkness. Well, I'm thinking of you tonight as I remember that scripture, because what you are doing is really shining the light in a very dark period of our history. But it always outshines the darkness. So I know that we're going to win in November because of you, and I just have to thank you again for that. You know, we have in Congress, in the House, a faith working group. And this is a group of members of Congress, a small group, that we come together to talk about how faith informs our decisions and our votes. Faith is my North Star and reminds me really in the book of James about faith, you know, is dead without works. And so it's really incumbent upon us as elected officials who come from whatever faith background to use our values to guide us. And my faith guides me in the decisions that we have to make each and every day on behalf of the poor and the most vulnerable. Now, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I attended Catholic school. That's my personal story. The Sisters of Loretta taught me for 8 years. They were an order of nuns who were very committed to peace and to justice. My grandfather was a member of the AME Church, and my mother was a member of the Methodist Church. And so you can see that I grew up in several faith traditions. And so when we talk about, for example, protecting our dreamers, supporting low-income families, middle-income families, protecting Medicare and Social Security, protecting civil and human rights, including voting protections, that really comes from my faith, because that's the work that I have to do if I'm going to be true to my faith. And so tonight, let me just say, I feel like, and I'm so happy to be here because I feel like I've been in church. I missed church on Sunday because I've been traveling to help candidates such as Susan to come to Congress in November to work for the common good. And so I just want to thank you for inviting me to be here. And I just want Susan to know, because this is getting close to the election, that you know, during this time, as close to the election as we are now, sometimes things go back and forth, but it's the power of the people and recognizing that we're all working for the people that really pulls us through these very difficult times. And so I know that we're going to win. Susan's going to win on November 6th. The entire country's going to win because of what you all are doing here and throughout the country. And I'm just going to close with, this is a song, and I think it was John who mentioned, you know, some of the fatigue sometimes that is taking place with some of us who are out there, some of you who are really doing the Lord's work in many ways. But it's a song that's sung in the Black church. And the words go, and I'm trying to remember them now. I think it's like, I ain't no way tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy, but I know he didn't bring me this far to leave me. And so during this moment between now and November 6th, I feel energized. I feel the spirit moving. I feel the country coming together. I feel that all of us, because of who we are as a country and a nation, who we are as people of faith, we're going to move forward and work for the common good. And you all are leading that effort. So thank you again for inviting me to be here. Congratulations on the kickoff of this wonderful national tour. And I hope to see you in California. God bless you.
I hope this doesn't blow away. This is my very, very special blue cup. Take it with me wherever I go. I'll explain later. So now I'd like to direct some of the energy that is focused here and focus it on each other, because really without each other and understanding the human that's sitting next to you, wherever you're at, whether it's the cafe or the bus, without understanding that that energy right there is where your civic engagement happens, where your collaboration happens. So if you would participate in this, the person next to you, I want you to turn to them. If you're sitting alone, I want you to be embraced by the people who are in clusters. Maybe find someone who is alone. You don't have to get up and move, but just be engaged. I want you to turn to each other, not at me, don't look at me. I want you to say and repeat after me. I might know you. I might not know you. You have a past. I have a past. But our future is unwritten. Untapped energy. Untapped potential. For us, you and I, to move forward and create something great. That's it. Now, I wanted to do that to try to call into the room the people who are not here, the people that you will go out into the world and interact with that you might not know. Instead of viewing that person as a stranger, or maybe even a potential threat, or even those who oppose you, look at them as potential collaborators. Because it starts with us. And yes, we support our politicians who reflect our values, but we have to look inside ourselves and see, what do we reflect? I mentioned earlier about this concept of unconscious bias. It's something that I had to come to terms with. In 2016, I did a protest against the Mississippi state flag that went viral, made national headlines, and it really polarized people. And it was during a time of seclusion where I was trying to figure out, why don't these people see me as human? You know, there were threats made against myself and my family, a lot of homophobic, misogynistic, racist threats, and saying, why do they not see me as human? What is this perspective that they have? And then I also realized on my part, like, I wasn't seeing them as human either. Like, I wasn't respecting their perspective at all. It was during this time where I developed a meditative practice called conceptual resistance. And this allowed me to tackle my unconscious bias. And after I was able to complete this, it's ongoing. I still do it almost every day, but I got to a point where I said, I want to reach out to my harshest critics and see if they will meet with me in person to talk about this issue of the state flag, to humanize the issue. But it wasn't until I could get past my barriers that I could even think about reaching out to them. And I did. Some were like, no. Some were like, yes. And the ones who were like, yes, we're still collaborating to this day, tackling things in our community. So I just wanted to show you quickly conceptual resistance. I use a blue cup because that's what was around me during my seclusion. Any inanimate stationary object will work. But I sit and I stare at this blue cup. I focus on one point. And while I'm focusing on it, I'm thinking about what is the blue cup on? What is in my peripheral? I can kind of see the figures in the audience in my peripheral. I see this light that's flashing time, that's telling me I'm taking too much time, probably. I see a light here, hard stage. And while I'm focusing on this one point and paying attention to what is supporting the cup and what is beyond the cup, I slowly, in my mental, begin to reposition myself and place myself on the other side in another seat, possibly your seat. And I think about, with your eye line in the cup, what are you seeing? You're probably seeing in your peripheral my pink shirt. You're probably hearing the person next to you breathing. You're hearing the crickets as well. The point of conceptual resistance is to challenge our own perspective of reality and know that it is inherently wrong because it is just our perspective. It's right to us always. But to every one of you looking at this cup, you are all experiencing something different. So if I can simultaneously view a perspective, maybe two, maybe three, I'm only up to three, but it's a strengthening tool. It's a strengthening tool. If you can do this with an inanimate object and understand that reality is subjective, is objective, then what can you do with the current event? What can you do with an opposing view? It strengthens our ability to have collaborative conversations, co-creative conversations, rather than just debating online. So this is conceptual resistance. It's just a tool that I developed that helped me tackle my unconscious bias. And I want you all to think about, what can we do daily ourselves to help us add more humanity to those that maybe we have biases against? It could be the trans person that you see walking down the street. It could be the black man that you see walking down the street. It could be the woman in your workplace. Whatever biases that we hold, we have to begin to unlearn these things because it is societal pressure that keeps us divided, keeps us fearing one another, othering people. So it has to start with us. It has to start with me. It has to start with you. And let that radiate. Let that smile and that love and that energy of collaboration radiate wherever you go. You don't know what's in somebody's cup. What you say can fill that person's cup for that day. Or it could deplete their cup. Or you might say or do something that overflows their cup. You don't know what's in that person's cup. But just know that everyone has a past. The future has yet to be written. But we can write it together. People, not things.
Hi everybody, I'm Rob Ryerson. It's a real pleasure to be with you tonight. How amazing is Genesis B? Wow. So I woke up on November 8th, 2016 with this unbelievable sense of, oh no, what did we just do? I don't know if you woke up in the same way, having that same kind of feeling. But I had the sense of like, I can't believe that we just did what we did as a country. And what in the world are we going to do now? And that's a really significant thing for me to think about because I'm a Republican. I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm a Republican that has all of the Republican bona fides. I was telling somebody earlier, my first dog was named after William F. Buckley. That's how Republican I have been. But I woke up with this sense of like, what have we just done? Because the direction that my party has taken the country and the direction that my party has gone over the last several years is really kind of a horrifying direction. And I woke up with this sense of, I have got to do something about this. but I really had no idea what I was going to do. So in the days after the election, I kept having the same conversation with my friends, where we were talking about, how we were feeling and how we were processing things. And in the days after the election, the weeks after the election, I saw so many of my friends get involved in ways that they never had been involved before. They joined indivisible groups. They went to events like this or protests when they would never have done that before. For the first time in their lives, they began to write their senators or to call their congressperson's office. They were finally speaking up on social media about the things that are important to them and the direction of the country and politics, that thing we're not supposed to talk about. And it was really amazing to see my friends get involved in this way. And I had this sense of like, I need to do something, but I don't know what that thing is. On Inauguration Day, I got up and went to work like normal. I came home after work, and that day my wife had listened to a podcast. And on that podcast, she had heard about a new organization that was starting that was going to recruit people to run for Congress all over the country. And I walked in the door from work, and she held her phone out at me that she had listened to this podcast on, and she said, "You've got to listen to this. You've got to do this." And so I went to bed that night thinking, I might run for Congress, which is a really bizarre thought to have when you really get down to it. So that began a process where I decided to challenge my incumbent congressman, a powerful Republican, a staunch supporter of the administration, one of the Republican leaders that has taken my party so far from its historic values and is taking the country in a direction that is just so far from the common good. And so I jumped in and spent a year and a half on this long shot campaign for Congress. I didn't win. That's okay. Not long after I didn't win, I got a call from Doug who said, "Hey, we're doing this thing called Vote Common Good. Why don't you jump in and help out with this?" And it was once again this sense of like, oh yeah, that's the thing I'm supposed to do. My guess is that all of you that are here today have this sense that you need to do something, that something needs to be done. And you feel some sense of some desire to be involved in that, to be part of that. And maybe you know very clearly, this is the thing that I am doing. And maybe you have some sense of like, I think I should do something, but I'm not sure what it is. But you know that something needs to be done. You need to do something because things need to change. You know, when we talk about change, oftentimes you'll hear the phrase, people will use the phrase, they'll talk about wholesale change, right? And wholesale change is when everything gets changed all at once and we're going to fix all of the problems all at once. And you get this idea that okay, if we do that would be amazing, but realistically that's never going to happen. And wholesale change is this idealistic thing that ends up disappointing us. And sometimes maybe you've heard the phrase incremental change. The idea that we're going to just have slow change, step by step, that very slowly, a little bit at a time, we're going to change things. And maybe you have the sense of, like I do, that oftentimes incremental change is really an excuse to preserve the status quo for as long as possible. I heard a phrase a few weeks ago that is really kind of captured my imagination. And that phrase is acupunctural interventions. Acupunctural interventions. And the idea is that you can do something really small that can make a big difference. And just like the tip of a needle, when it enters your skin, can relieve a whole lot of discomfort, there are small things that we can do each and every day that can make a huge difference. And so maybe when we think about how are we going to change things, wholesale change seems too idealistic. Incremental change seems too slow. But acupunctural interventions is something every single one of us can do every single day. When it comes to being involved in politics, it can feel sometimes like the small things that we do don't really make a big difference. But the reality is that the small things do make a huge difference. Small things, like spending a couple of hours at a campaign headquarters making phone calls on behalf of a candidate that you believe in, a candidate that supports the common good. Walking around your neighborhood and talking with your neighbors and handing them a flyer and talking to them about the candidate that you support, who supports the common good. Everyone who's involved in a campaign who's here will tell you that those things that seem really small to you make a huge difference to the campaign. Maybe donating to a campaign that you support and a candidate that you believe in. Because we, the people, have got to support candidates who support the common good. Because if we don't, our elections will continue to be bought and paid for by huge corporations that don't care about the common good. They care about themselves. And most importantly, the small thing that you can do that can make the biggest difference is vote. Vote. And fill your car up with neighbors and make sure they vote too. And let me just add this. You know what we don't need? We don't need people who are acting out of fear and panic and anxiety. What we need is people of faith who are confident and are acting and working and doing things out of an overflow of love and peace and joy in their hearts. That's the thing that will bring about the greatest change in our world. So I'm a pastor, and so I make sense of my life and our turbulent world through the words of Jesus. And Jesus often told stories about the way things actually are. There's the way that they kind of look like in the world, and then there's the way things actually are. And he talked about them as the kingdom of God. And Jesus told the story about how the kingdom of God is like a little seed, a little mustard seed. It's the smallest of all the seeds, but when it gets planted in the ground, it begins to grow. And it grows into this bush that becomes big enough so that the birds of the air can nest in its branches. Because small things done with faith make a huge difference. Acupunctural interventions that can change this community and this state and this country and this world for the common good. Thank you.
They say we should walk dark out here, and it's hard to see at night. Sometimes the tears don't stop. I wonder, will we just dry up? Blow away like sand, all alone in this dry land. In the wilderness we cry out, is there anybody there? Is anybody listening? Does anybody care? Please don't give up, 'cause we need you now. We need you now. Please don't give up, 'cause we need you now. We need you now. Sing that with me. Please don't give up, 'cause we need you now. We need you now. Turn to your neighbor and sing it. Please don't give up, 'cause we need you now. We need you now. Please don't give up, 'cause we need you now. We need you now. Don't give up, 'cause we need you now. We need you now, right now.
Hello, good evening.